Hello, welcome to the theory of the staircase. I've been meaning to do this for so long, so let's see if it's any good. First of all, if you're doing anything with this whiteboarding thing, a word is warning. You've got to put a line at the end. Otherwise, violate on the board will actually kill me. I'm not speaking in metaphors now. We're talking like actual death, pool of blood on the floor. Oh, there's the line around the edge. Theory of the staircase. All right, so the question is, what is the staircase? Now, you might say to me, David, don't be so stupid. It's there. It's got steps on it, you know. We know what a staircase is, you know, give me a break. And I would say, kind of, yes, but you know, if I was doing a theory, in our course, we talked a lot about narratives and different narratives. And if I picked a subject matter that you were emotionally attached to, so let's say I picked gender identity, you would have strong emotions and be very attached to views on that issue and very attached to certain theories and narratives on that subject matter. So the fact I'm picking this because it's going to illustrate some important things about theories in general and narratives in general to help you unpick that. So the next thing you might say is, David, I don't care about your staircase. So you know, I get it, and in a way, that's also why I've picked a very, you know, a subject you don't care about, you don't have strong emotions about. But it is possible to have different theories of the staircase. So the question is, what is the staircase? And we can come up with some different theories about what the staircase is. And we're going to come up with 4. So they are, first of all, the woodworm theory of the staircase. Next is the interior designer theory. Next is the stairlift engineer. And next is the Star Trek theory, or the Star Trek transport theory. Okay, and each of these theories is like any theory. You could use the term narrative, you could use the word construct, model. They're all the same thing. They are something we have in our mind to think about something real in the world. That isn't you know, the knowledge of the theory is not the same as the thing, but it describes the thing in a certain way. So what are each of these 4 theories? So the woodworm theory, we are going to say that in the staircase, it's riddled with woodworm. Now, there are not actually woodworm in my staircase. I hope not anyway. But for this thought experiment, for this exercise, we're going to assume that there are woodworm in the staircase, and that the woodworms are conscious and have some consciousness and awareness of their surroundings within the wood. And maybe what they want to do is find sources of food or the juiciest bits of wood to eat. And maybe in that theory, the grain of the wood might be a very important sort of concept that they have when they are interacting with their environment. So the woodworm theory is whatever the woodworm has in its mind when living within the wood in the staircase. That's the woodworm theory of the staircase. The next one is the interior designer. So let's say we wanted to get a carpet down the stairs, and we wanted it to be in keeping with the rest of the decor of the house. This is an 1888 house, and you might have a brass rail at each step, and the staircase comes down, and a lot of thought might be put into the style. Is it going to be an old-fashioned type of style of carpeting, or a modern, or how's it going to be done? So an interior designer would have strong views on that, and have a way of thinking about interior design and what's appropriate for the house and what the client wants, and that's the interior designer theory of the staircase. Next, we might have a stairlift engineer. So let's say an old and infirm person lived in the house and they couldn't get up the stairs to their bedroom without assistance. And a stairlift is a device that involves some engineering. It's expensive and involves a rail up the side of the staircase and a seat, and must be electrical operated, I imagine. And the person can move themselves on the seat, and it takes them up seated up the stairs and round the corner and to their bedroom. And let's imagine, for the sake of the thought experiment, that because of the woodworm, there's a serious question about how much metal, what construction standard do we need to build this stairlift to be safe and to not have the possibility of collapse. And maybe there might be a debate about whether we need a pillar at a metal pillar at a certain point to kind of support the thing, or whether it can be done just on the weight of the staircase. And engineers would have calculations and a way of thinking about how they do it, and they might write a 10-page report with recommendations, and that's the staircase engineer theory of the staircase. And finally, we have the Star Trek transporter theory of the staircase. Now, not all of you may know the movie franchise and TV series Star Trek, but in that, it's a sci-fi show, and in that show they posit that there is a technology, the show's set in the future, that you can scan a physical object, including a person, and the scan is so accurate it can tell where every single atom in that physical object is, and if it's moving, how it's moving. So it can scan a whole person, then disintegrate that person, beam the data to another location where there's another of these devices. Or is there? I'm not sure. No, it can be done. They can do it at a distance. They can sort of project the data of the person and then recreate the person in another location. So in this show, they regularly take members of the crew on a spaceship and beam them down to a planet. And let's say they know they're going to land on the planet and they're going to be in a war situation with enemies. They'll come down with guns drawn, they'll be scanned with guns drawn, ready to go, ready to fight, and they'll materialize on the planet in that mindset and ready for action. So it doesn't just transport the atoms, it transports their mental state and their consciousness. It's incredible technology. And they also use this they have a device called a replicator based on the same technology, where they can generate food items and say, oh, you know, I want a cup of tea, and it will generate the cup with the tea in it, and because it can put all the atoms in the right place. So that's doesn't exist, of course, but it's a great device in this. So what is the best theory? So what is the staircase? Which theory are we going to go with? And I think many people, when faced with, well, what's the right theory? What's the right way to think about something? They would say, well, what is the truth? Right? What's the true theory? What's the way of thinking about it that accords most closely with the actual reality of the thing? Okay. So, but there's that seems very kind of logical and obvious, but there's actually a bunch of problems with that way of thinking, which we'll come on to. So maybe I'll do that now. So we've got 4 theories here. They're very different from each other, and you could say, well, you know, food for woodworm is obviously completely different from interior design concepts to do with Victorian whatever. So those two frameworks are completely opposed, and they don't correlate at all. And you can imagine people getting into an argument over what's the truth, when in fact they're both true in the sense that they say true things about the staircase, and even though they're completely incompatible with each other as theories, they're talking about the same thing. And we sometimes find this, I sometimes find this in culture wars type conversations, where someone's on the left, someone's on the right. They can argue very forcefully with each other, and often they're not really listening to each other. But if they calm down, there's tremendous agreement, it turns out, or the conversations I've listened to. So you might say, someone on the left saying, might say in one of those type of conversations, well, how can you support the fact that there's people starving, or people who can't afford the medical treatment that other more privileged people can have, right? And the person on the right will say, of course I support that. Of course I think that's wrong. And I would never argue that we should have, in a modern society, people who are starving or shouldn't have access to certain medical treatments. And you can have it the other way around. You can have someone on the right saying, well, there's lots of middle class people, and if they, you know, took more risks or were prepared to, or if they worked harder, they could earn more. And people on the left saying, yes, of course, that's true. So there's a lot more agreement than you sometimes think. But if you're just talking about these theoretical frameworks, the frameworks don't agree. So, but if we come back to this, well, which is the most accurate in terms of being correlation to reality? And it's clear to me that the Star Trek transporter is the closest to reality, because it says where every single atom is in that staircase. So, you know, that's completely accurate. It's completely true. But I can't think of a use for it. I think it's true, but not useful. given that the technology doesn't exist, if you theoretically had a data file, gazillions of gigabytes showing where every single atom was, what would you use that for? And I've no idea. It certainly wouldn't be needed by an engineer building a stair lift, and it certainly wouldn't be needed by an interior designer, and definitely not by the woodworm. So the most true isn't necessarily the most useful. So we're going to look at these theories. We're going to evaluate through some different lenses. And why? Why would we want to evaluate these different theories? Well, sometimes we are, let's take a less controversial example, the kind of culture wars or left and right. Let's just say we're wanting to get better at managing our tasks in life. So should we use David Allen's framework, Getting Things Done, which a lot of people, it's like a best practice framework about managing all your tasks and your to-do list? Is that the one to go for? Or should I use Stephen Covey's model from his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is around categorizing tasks as important and urgent and into 4 categories. So he's got a different framework. So which is the right one? So we've got practical decisions all the time in life about what theory or what framework are we going to adopt to deal with a particular situation or deal with a particular problem. So one lens I'd like to look at this is which has got the most data. So if you actually captured in a computer system what this theory is, which would have the most data? So clearly it's the Star Trek transporter by a country mile. By the way, included in where every single atom is in that data set would be the woodworm and the woodworm's DNA. So within that data set is the DNA for life on Earth inside that data set. So it's really a big data set. There may be a bunch of bacteria. There may be millions of different types of bacteria living in the staircase, and that would all be modeled within a full data set of scan of that staircase. So next one is the stair lift engineer. Well, look, this person's probably studied engineering. They've probably been on a degree course for 3 years. There's all these different concepts in engineering. You can imagine all the textbooks they've read stacked like this would be part of the data set of understanding engineering and coming down to a 10-page report. But it would be a lot smaller than the Star Trek transporter theory data set. Next, the interior design. Now, because it's an 1888 house, all the data the interior designer would draw from, a lot of it wouldn't be in the staircase. A lot of it might be in other properties that they've seen that were from the same period, perhaps, or other styles of architecture and design that they've been exposed to. So the data set may be, I don't know if it would be bigger or smaller than the engineer's data set, but a huge amount of the data wouldn't be from the staircase, it would be elsewhere. So the Star Trek transporter data set, even though it's huge and by far the biggest and the most accurate, it's incomplete from the interior designer's point of view. They could have all the data there and it wouldn't give them what they needed because it doesn't have other properties that are elsewhere. And then the woodworm theory of the data set we can assume is the smallest, that the processing power of the woodworms, I don't even know if they have brains, but whatever the processing and computation that's going on within the woodworm is at a simpler level, one would assume, than the interior designer, although I've met we won't go into that. So, so which one do you pick? So I would say you've got to pick a theory. You've got to know who you are in this little drama. Are you a woodworm, an interior designer, or an engineer? And what's your purpose? In what's the theory for? What are you trying to achieve with the theory? Are you trying to design a stair lift that is safe and maybe is safe but not excessively costly, and balance those two things out? Are you trying to design something that's beautiful or that the client likes, which may not be the same thing? So what is your who are you and what are you trying to achieve is a critical thing in deciding which theory to use. It's much more important than what's the most accurate in terms of in the way that the Star Trek transporter theory is the most accurate. So don't get hung up on truth and if theories apparently are contradictory from that point of view and say, oh, that can't be right because it contradicts my other theory that I'm very attached to. And what you need to get very hung up on is what results does the theory produce. If I adopt that theory and follow that through and use that as my framework for approaching an issue, do I get the result? Do I get good results? Do I get the results I want? And that's really the key thing when choosing what theoretical framework to use. And I come across this a lot working in education, where people have theories about education that they're extremely attached to, and they'll get very defensive if you seem to be challenging those theories and so on and so forth. But often the theories they're following are not really producing very good results. So, you know, we need ways forward in situations like that. So, critical thinking course, theory of the staircase. How do we pick the right theory to summarize? Don't get overly stressed when theories don't agree with each other in terms of getting into conflict with other people. Try and understand what's their purpose in having a theory, what's their role in the drama. They may be picking the right theory for them and what they're trying to achieve, even though it's different from the one you've picked for your purpose. And think about be aware that there are different theories you can adopt, different models you can adopt when approaching different situations. Try and identify what they are and try and pick the best one that's going to produce the best results for what you're trying to achieve. Thank you.